It is 6 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get our regular city council meeting for Monday, November 21st going. We will start with our education, followed by the salute to the flag, led by Councilman Jansen. Please rise.
Let us pray. Good gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, Lord. I just ask you to give us strength and wisdom and with our colleagues that are entering on board with us tonight, and lead us and guide us and help us develop this city into the city that you would want it to be. Lord, we just thank you for your blessings that you put upon our first responders and our military as they preserve our freedom. And Lord, I most of all want to thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, for it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Dumont. Here. Councilmember Golding. Here. Councilmember Jansen.
Here.
Councilmember Meza.
Here.
Councilmember Nichols.
Here.
Mayor Hoffman.
Here, moving on to approval of minutes, item A.
I move that we approve the minutes from the closed executive session held on November 7th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item B.
I move that we approve the minutes from the regular council meeting held on November 7th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C.
I move that we approve the minutes from the special council meeting held on November 14th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Council announcements. Ms. Goldie.
Thank you, Mayor. Just have a few announcements. First of all, I want to thank Georgette Dumont for her service for the last 4 years. Having a doctorate in public administration has definitely been a beneficial thing for our city council, and you have brought a lot to the council. And again, thank you for your service, and I wish you all the best as you leave. I know you're going to be dancing as you leave, so anyway. And then to Chet Stokes, I also want to, he was out there somewhere. Okay, there he is, he's hiding. Also want to thank you, Chet, for your service for the last 2 years. I appreciate your involvement in the Florida League of Cities and also your contributions to the council. And then I also want to welcome our new council members that will be joining us on the dais in just a few minutes. Greg Sutton and Bill Horn. Look forward to working with both of you. And then last but not least, if you didn't notice it when you pulled in tonight, Deck the Chairs is pretty much set up and will be opening night on the 23rd. This is the 10th year for Deck the Chairs, and it's looking like it's going to be wonderful. So I hope everybody plans to go out. You can see the schedule for all the amazing things that they'll have going on at deckthecheers.org.
Mr. Mesa.
I want to echo my colleague, sorry, that's Candy. Councilmember Sandy Golding, welcome the 2 new council members. I look forward to working with you guys. Also, Georgette Dumont, it's been a pleasure sitting next to you. I'm going to miss showing off my socks to you. So I wish you nothing but the best. And other announcements that I have is a couple weeks ago I attended Mr. John Valerno's memorial service at the FOP. He had an amazing career in the Army. He volunteered many years with the Jacksonville Police Department, and he was a tremendous help. But if there's any way we could honor him, commemorate him, I will gladly support it 100%. Today, we have 4 new sworn officers. I attended their sworn in, and I welcome them here. We're very fortunate that people still want to become police officers and work for the city of Jacksonville Beach, so I welcome them. And then, I know I'm early, but we do have a retirement next month, Chris Wright. We went to the Citizens Police Academy together, and we've gotten to know each other more throughout the years, especially since I've been in office. So I wish her a happy retirement, and I hope she doesn't become a stranger to us all. And I'm definitely going to miss working with her. She was very well, very good. So, thank you.
Thank you. Another upcoming retirement worth mentioning is Jimmy Wilkins, who's been with the city for 38 years in the Parks and Rec Department. So both of those are big, they're important to the city, and they're going to be very much missed. But they've made tremendous contributions. I also want to congratulate Caroline Marks, who is the winner of the Supergirl Surf Pro that was held last weekend before, time has no meaning anymore. She is considered kind of local. She's from Melbourne, and she's the first surfer to win the Supergirl on the West Coast and the East Coast. So she won it right here. They benefited from some post-storm surf out there on Friday and Saturday and a little bit on Sunday, but it was a great event. I hope a lot of you were able to make it. It embraces the beach life. There was skateboarding, surfing, lots of young women being empowered at different sessions, and a ton of Olympians out there. I met an Olympic snowboarder who had been to 5 Olympics, and that was just a really cool event, and it went really well from all accounts from what I've heard. Any other announcements, council? Courtesy of the Florida visitors, I don't have any cards that are not attached to an agenda item. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we will start with our first item of business, item A, if we can get a motion.
I move that we adopt the declaration of election results as provided by the Duval County Canvassing Board and certified by the state of Florida for the election results of the city of Jacksonville Beach general election held on November 8th, 2022.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from council? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. The next item of business is to present a resolution of esteem to our outgoing council members. It's been a busy couple of years here at the city of Jacksonville Beach, so these are quite lengthy. So I'm going to sit up here and read them if that's okay with everybody. We'll start with the first one on the dais here is for council member Chester Stokes. Oh, sorry, I'm going out of order. Chet is how we know him here. Whereas Chet E. Stokes served as council member at large seat 3 from November 3rd, 2020 to November 8, 2022. And whereas council member Stokes was a key leader who focused strongly on the concerns of the community and community outreach. And whereas council member Stokes was instrumental in improving the quality of life for Jacksonville Beach residents by approving funding and participating in the planning of numerous initiatives, including the following: recruiting and selecting a new city attorney, developing and adopting the city's strategic plan and vision and mission statements, participating in and completing a review of the city's entire charter and presenting proposed amendments to the charter to constituents, participating in the development of the Urban Trails Master Plan, approving the relocation of the Veterans Memorial to the Oceanfront Park, approving the redesign of Latham Plaza, Gonzalez Park, and the Sunshine Playground at South Beach Park, advocating for micromobility e-scooters pilot program, opposing short-term rental preemption to the state, amending the language and regulations of the Land Development Code pertaining to outdoor restaurant areas, the requirements to qualify for a special restaurant alcoholic beverage license, and clarifying definitions pertaining to restaurants, amending the honorary street designation policy to include specific provisions for fallen wartime military veterans, joining the American Flood Coalition, reapportioning the city's voting district, amending the city's comprehensive plan to incorporate a property rights element, supporting the city's local bill JB1 to be considered by the Duval County Legislative Delegation for the 2023 state legislative session, approving the collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, approving the collective bargaining agreement with the Laborers International Union of North American Local 630, approving 2 position classification and pay plan amendments for city employees, approving the addition of a new paid holiday for city employees, Juneteenth, navigating effectively throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council and of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida congratulates Chester E. Stokes for his exemplary service and authorizes this resolution of esteem. Chet?
For the record, it's E. Chester. I'll let it.
Yeah. Oh, no.
No.
We'll get that there. What?
Yeah, let's do the photo on Instagram.
There, yeah, that's it. We got it. And thank you, Chet. It's been a pleasure to serve with you. The 2 years, although we were really busy, went really fast, and you always came prepared, were engaged. And one thing I will say about this council, is having been on the council for 8 years previously, is this is a council that shows up. We show up prepared to meetings, but we also show up in the community at events to support our local businesses, anything that we can do to be out there and supporting our community. I think every single person on this dais, including Chet, has done that, and I've been very proud to be the mayor during this time in our city. Next up.
Thank you, Chet. You did a great job.
Councilmember Georgette E. Dumont. Is the E in the right place on this one? Okay, just want to make sure. Whereas Georgette E. Dumont served as council member of District 2, Seat 5 from November 6, 2018 to November 21st, 2022. Whereas Councilmember Dumont served on the General Employees Pension Board from January 22nd, 2019 to November 8th, 2022. And whereas Georgette E. Dumont served on the Planning Commission from March 4th, 2013 to November 6th, 2018. And whereas Councilmember Dumont was a key leader who focused strongly on the concerns of the community and community outreach. And whereas Councilmember Dumont was instrumental in improving the quality of life for Jacksonville Beach residents by approving funding and participating in the planning of numerous initiatives, including the following: recruiting and selecting a new city manager and an in-house city attorney, developing and adopting the city's strategic plan and vision and mission statements, developing and adopting the city's code of ethics for public officials, participating in and completing a review of the city's entire charter and presenting proposed amendments to the charter to constituents, opposing short-term preemption to the short-term rental preemption to the state, joining the American Flood Coalition, developing and adopting the city's paid parking program, developing and adopting improvements to the city's sea turtle protection ordinance, developing and adopting a complete rewrite of City Code of Ordinance Chapter 5 Animal Code, I forgot about that one. Revising and adopting amendments, City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Beaches and Bulkheads, developing and adopting City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 20, Parks and Recreation, amending the language and regulations of the Land Development Code pertaining to outdoor restaurant areas, the requirements to qualify for a special restaurant alcoholic beverage license, and clarify definitions pertaining to restaurants. Approving the relocation of the Veterans Memorial to the Oceanfront Park, developing and adopting city's honorary street name designation policy for military veterans and fallen wartime heroes, approving the redesign of Latham Plaza, Gonzalez Park, and the Sunshine Playground at South Beach Park, participating in the development of the Urban Trails Master Plan, approving 2 new paid holidays for city employees, President's Day and Juneteenth, navigating effectively throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida congratulates Georgette E. Dumont for her exemplary service and authorizes this resolution of esteem.
Chet, do you want to come up and I'll get them?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to do one thing?
Yes.
Oh, you want to come in, Chet? No, you're in this one. We'll get through it, guys. We got it.
There's an E right there.
Okay, now's the time. So she sits down and stays for the rest of the meeting. Oh, I knew she would. Okay, we will now administer the oath of office, one at a time. Okay, we'll start with Sandy Golding. This is Sandy's mom and her husband for those following along.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Sandy Golding. I, Sandy Golding. Solemnly swear. Solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution. That I will support the Constitution. And will obey the laws of the United States. And will obey the laws of the United States. And of the state of Florida. And of the state of Florida. City of Jacksonville Beach. City of Jacksonville Beach. And will faithfully discharge the duties. And will faithfully discharge the duties. Of the office of council member. Of the office of council member. Seat 6, District 3. Seat 6, District 3. Congratulations.
Lori. Nichols.
I, Corey Nichols.
I, Corey Nichols,
Solemnly swear.
solemnly swear
That I will support the Constitution.
that I will support the Constitution
And will obey the laws of the United States.
and will obey the laws of the United States
And the state of
and
Florida.
the state of Florida,
City of Jacksonville Beach.
city of Jacksonville Beach,
And will faithfully discharge the duties.
and will faithfully discharge the duties
Of the office of council member.
of the office of council member,
Seat 4, District 1.
seat 4, District 1. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bill Horn.
Raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I, William Horn.
I, William Horn,
Solemnly swear.
solemnly swear
That I will support the Constitution.
that I will support the Constitution
And will obey the laws of the United States.
and will obey the laws of the United States
And the state of Florida.
and the state of Florida,
City of Jacksonville Beach.
city of Jacksonville Beach,
And will faithfully discharge the duties.
and will faithfully discharge the duties
Of the office of council member.
of the office of council member,
Seat 5, District 2.
seat 5, District 2.
Congratulations.
Greg Sutton.
Repeat after me. I, Greg Sutton.
I, Greg Sutton,
Solemnly swear.
solemnly swear
That I will support the Constitution.
that I will support the Constitution
And obey the laws of the United States.
and obey the laws of the United States
And of the state of Florida.
and of the state of Florida,
City of Jacksonville Beach.
city of Jacksonville Beach,
And will faithfully discharge the duties.
and will faithfully discharge the duties
Of the office of council member.
of the office of council member,
Seat 3 at large.
seat 3 at large.
Congratulations.
Welcome to the dais, gentlemen. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Golding? Here. Councilmember Horn?
Here.
Councilmember Jansen?
Here.
Councilmember Meza?
Here.
Councilmember Nichols?
Here.
Councilmember Sutton?
Here.
Mayor Hoffman?
Here. Mr. Sutton just wanted to, if you might want to turn your microphone off when you're not talking. Many politicians before you have run out on the hard way. Okay, we have a quorum. Everyone is in attendance. For those of you who did not come for the remaining 282 pages of agenda that we have to go through, you're welcome to leave at any time. Okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting your respective friends and family. We definitely all appreciate that. Okay, item A is to select a council member to serve as the mayor pro tem. I'll open the floor for nominations. Mr. Mesa.
Nominate Corey Nichols.
Thank you. We have a nomination for Corey Nichols. Any additional nominations? Nominations are closed. We need to do a vote since there's only one. Madam Clerk, roll call. Just say who you're voting for.
Councilmember Golding,
Nichols?
Councilmember Horn,
Nichols.
Councilmember Jansen,
Nichols.
Councilmember Mesa,
Nichols.
Councilmember Nichols,
Nichols?
Councilmember Sutton,
Nichols?
Mayor Hoffman.
Nichols. Congratulations, Corey, on continuing as mayor pro tem. Thank you. You've been doing a great job so far.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Item B, city attorney.
Yes, ma'am. Mayors, members of council, pursuant to section 286.011, subparagraph 8 of the Florida statutes, I respectfully request a shade meeting with the council, the city manager, and outside counsel present to discuss and seek advice regarding settlement negotiations to resolve the VLSC's pending litigation against the city and the city's pending litigation against SLG Investment Partnership. If agreeable, I'd like to propose that the meeting take place on Monday, December 12th, prior to the start of the city council briefing. I anticipate the meeting will last from 1 to 2 hours. For purposes of laying the record, the style of the pending litigation is as follows. City of Jacksonville Beach versus SLG Investment Partnership, LLP, case number 16-2020-002297. And Volunteer Life Saving Corps versus City of Jacksonville Beach, case number 16-2022-CA-002089. Thank you.
We just need a consensus.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody good with that? The 12th of December? Monday? We're good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Moving on to our regular agenda, the monthly financial reports. Ms. Gossett.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ashley Gossett, CFO. Before you tonight, you have the October monthly financial statements, which is the first month of the fiscal year, for 8.5% of the annual budget. And as always, I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
And a motion?
I move that we accept the monthly financial reports for the month of October 2022.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from council? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Councilmember Mesa,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes. Item B, Police Department?
Go get them, kids.
Good evening. Thomas Crumley, Police Department, Detective Division Commander. The Police Department is requesting approval for the purchase of 2 state of Florida approved unmanned aerial systems, also known as UASs. So you'll hear that term a lot. With technology advancing the way that it's gone, I'm sure everybody's wondering why we're just now proposing this purchase, but we wanted to make sure that we got it right. For us, this is a huge force multiplier. It enhances our capabilities. It's not just replacing something, it's truly enhancing our capabilities. But with that in mind, we wanted to make sure that we research the costs, the limitations, everything that goes along with creating a program such as this. We wanted to make sure that we had it right. Not to mention, during this whole thing, the state has come up with several mandates that put limitations on what drones can be purchased and things like that. So now that that is all settled, we wanted to move forward with a purchase. Some of the things, just as highlights, some of the things that we will be able to really enhance our capabilities are obvious. You know, the first thing is public relations events. Those are huge for us. You've all, I'm staring at familiar faces, y'all all participated in all of our special events, and you know that that's huge to us and what we do as a community. Our moving into a tactical mindset, any of our SWAT situations or tactical issues that we deal with on the street would be huge for us. Missing persons, whether it's elderly or children or really anyone. And we've already had the ability to deploy a drone that we had donated to the agency and kind of at a test and experimental phase, and it helps tremendously with missing person scenes. Not to mention our hurricane pre and post, being able to take photographs, mapping of the dunes and any of the sea erosion that we've had during those storms. Those are things that are kind of at the forefront for us as far as enhancing our capabilities. The total purchase cost, we're proposing to be funded out of federal equitable sharing. That's our seizure money. And the total cost is $39,383.40, which would include 2 of the Skydio drones that you see there, a large and a small one. Large one is, obviously it gives us great flight time and different things outdoors, better resolution, where the small for us would be more of a tactical sense. It can be used outdoors, but we can also use it indoors in tactical situations. That's part of our SWAT operations that we have proposed. We would get 2 controllers, spare batteries, spare propellers, extend a 1-year basic warranty that comes with it to 2 additional years that would give us 3. 1 year of soft grade upgrades that extended to an additional 2 years. And the most important thing is training for our staff. So the last piece that's attached to that, both drones will have thermal imaging capabilities and obstacle avoidance. So hopefully we won't need those extra propellers. Any questions?
We'll go ahead and get a motion on this item. Mr. Nichols?
I move that we approve the purchase of 2 UAS drones from Skydio on the Sourcewell contract from federal equitable sharing funds.
Second?
We have a motion and a second, and the lights lit up, so brace yourself. Mr. Nichols?
Well, first of all, I'd like to start with, I appreciate the police department adding the old yearbook pictures online. Those are fantastic. I hope to see them every year. Secondly, the licensing requirement for the pilots. How many are going to get that pilot certification? What's necessary? Can you just walk us through like a 30-second on that?
So I can let Detective Alan Ford speak to the licensing as far as exactly what the requirements are. We're kind of trying not to, because this is something that we're opening the door on and starting, so we're not trying to put a number on how many pilots we're going to limit it to, because for us, it's a secondary duty. So we may train numerous pilots, but in the chance that somebody's not doing something else and performing another duty, so that they'll be available to come out when we need them to come out. But Detective Ford.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Detective Ford with the Jackson Beach Police Department, assigned to SIU, the Detective Division. I've had the pleasure to embark on this new project. I'm telling you, these drones, it's something special. Like, their capabilities are astronomical. So right now for the program, we have 5 people lined up. All 5 people are taking the Part 107 license and test right now. Pretty much there's not an hour attached to it. It's based on the individual pilot and how he obtains that knowledge. So basically, we just had Shane Drone, which one of our officers just finished in a matter of 2 weeks. Our other 3 pilots, they're probably around maybe like a 2 to 3 week mark right now. And they should be testing probably next week. So, but yeah, so it's Part 107. You pretty much have to, you apply with the FAA. FAA basically sends you to a testing center. It's all a controlled environment. Once they take the test there, if it's a go, you get your license in a week. If it's a no-go, you get 2 other chances to retake that test within a 12-month calendar period.
Great, thank you very much.
Mr. Mesa.
Anytime we can add some enhancements to the police department, it's a thrill for me. I've always been in support of you guys. I love the drone program. I do have a couple questions, and going back to the licensed pilots, I think having 5 trained licensed pilots is good. You never know when one might be out or ill. The other question I have, so obviously the police department goes through that certification every year, correct?
It's going to be every 2 years.
All right, so
Every 2 years, each individual pilot goes through it.
the certification that you guys will get, what happens if it's not met?
Oh, if that pilot doesn't basically re-up on his 2-year commitment in reference to the certification, he just loses it. And then at that point, we drop down a pilot or someone else can jump into the program. That's like an officer basically says, hey, I've done it for 4 years, I don't want to hold the certification no more. You can let it lapse and somebody else can come into the program at that point.
Now, the spare batteries, are you guys getting 2 or are they giving you guys 3?
We're getting an enterprise kit. It's going to be 6 batteries per unit.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I'll come back with more questions.
Mr. Jansen.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say I've had the experience of working with the UAS unit, obviously with JSO in my former career, and all the examples you gave were fantastic, and it even goes further than that. I know that in homicide and cold case where I work, we used it for mapping, crime scene mapping and that kind of thing. It's practically the next best thing to having an air unit without having an air unit. And I strongly encourage my colleagues to vote yes, since I will be voting and supporting it. So good job, good presentation, and keep up the good work.
I apologize, I didn't say crime scene mapping, but that part is a huge thing for us, that crime scene mapping and traffic homicide investigations, that it's going to be huge for us. So.
And also the good thing with it, it offers 2D mapping and also 3D mapping. So it just takes those endless capabilities to the next level when you have to present this in front of a court case.
Ms. Golding.
Thank you. Just want to say thank you to the police department. You guys, for the last 4 years, every time you come to us with something, you have done your research, and we know that you know, we can depend on whatever you're recommending us is a sound recommendation. So thank you so much for everything that you've done. I do appreciate the fact that, you know, you took the time that you did so that we get it right. And I do have a question for you. Once we get these, will you be able to schedule a demonstration for us?
Yes, ma'am, most certainly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Golding. Mr. Mesa?
Yes, we're at the altitude 400 feet. I didn't see, unless I missed it, what's the, obviously when there's heavy wind, you can fly, but what's the mile per hour? 5 miles, there's, the wind's 5 miles per hour, are you guys not gonna be able to fly it? What's the limit?
So that kind of depends on which unit we're operating. Each unit would have different parameters of what the wind.
Yeah. So, and you know how it is, when it depends on the different speeds, we basically run an app called our drone, Weather Drone, and Weather Drone pretty much lets us know based on the area, calculating wind, distance, altitude of the drone, whether or not we can fly or not. So once we check this out, it kind of simplifies everything and says, hey, don't fly this drone right at this point. But yeah, so we just rely on weather systems to help us out with that.
And then one last thing, I swear. Blue Angels are coming in town. Homeland Security takes over, correct? Or is it a joint effort?
So there will be, whenever the Blue Angels come into town, there is a window where there's a flight restriction.
So we won't be able to fly the drone.
There are certain technicalities where, yes, we would be able to, but
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. I echo my colleagues' sentiments that you guys really do your homework before coming before us, and I really appreciate that. It makes it a lot easier to support these types of investments, especially, and it's great that they're coming from seizure monies. I did, and I also appreciate that you included the department's drone policy as well as the corresponding state statute. That was really interesting to read, because I think the average citizen may immediately think surveillance, and it does specify this isn't to surveil private property outside of a warranted type of situation. So it was good to see that really detailed in there. Also the retention, I know something when people talk about body cameras, it's how long do we retain the videos and everything like that. So I saw that there's a retention policy in there. Do we feel like we have the technological support to support what we need in terms of footage and data coming out of these things?
so we are working with IT to expand those capabilities. Obviously, that works hand in hand with what we're doing from a crime scene perspective, because everybody knows the cameras are getting better and data storage is always an issue. So those things are kind of at the forethought of our mind, but yes, we are working with IT to make sure that those needs are met.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. When you go so long hearing the names in the exact same order, it's kind of abrupt to hear them in different order. Thank you both.
Hey,
Appreciate
thank
the
you, guys.
presentation. Okay, next up, item C, Taylor Mops.
Good evening, Taylor Moss, CRA Coordinator. At the September 19th council meeting, staff was given the approval to work out the scope and fee with Half and Associates for Lakeland Plaza. During this process, it was best determined that splitting this into two phases would work better in the long run for this project. And in phase one, we will be circling back to the design that was done back in 2019, kind of refining that concept and then having a little more community engagement and then council and CRA feedback, as well as all of the surveying services. And then if it's deemed necessary, we will go into potential splash pad, water feature, or fountain engineering services at that time. So we are requesting the approval in the amount of $84,600 to move forward with phase one of this scope, the project for Lakeland Plaza. And I would like to thank Dustin Felix, not to put you on the spot, but thank you. Dustin is with HAF, and he came tonight just as support if we needed it. So thank you, Dustin.
Thank you, Ms. Mops. And a motion.
I move that we approve the scope of services and fees, phase one for Half and Associates for design and engineering services for Lakeland Plaza in the amount of $84,600.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any comments from council? Ms. Golden.
I don't know if this is a question for you, Taylor, but I was looking at the schedule, the proposed schedule, and it showed that community meetings were happening in October, November, and January, and obviously that's not happening now because of, it took us some time to do this negotiation for the fees, right? So if you could you let us know when the community meetings are expected to happen? And also, I'm assuming that other dates are going to be moving as well. So what would be the date for the schematic design to be provided to the CRA?
So at this time, when we got the joint council CRA workshop in January, post that, we will probably start having some public input and public sessions. I will say with the public comment periods we had leading up to the original design that we went off of, we're still incorporating a lot of those comments. So, if the public wants to come to the meetings as well to have additional feedback, but once we have the final dates, I will be sure to send out ample notice. We don't have those right now. And then, sorry, what was your second question?
And then when would we expect it to go to the CRA?
Yes, so again, that's all going to kind of be determined, I think, after the joint meeting, pending how much feedback we get and how many changes we want to see. Again, right now, we do have a design conceptual drawing, and we do anticipate seeing changes. I think through COVID, the CRA at least has said, they learned the importance of having usable outdoor space, not just kind of one big empty space at all times. So I think that will all kind of dictate how far we have to refine that concept.
Okay, thank you.
So to be determined.
Mr. Mesa?
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
what are the likely chances of you coming back saying, hey, this was the amount, but circumstances have led us to, we need more money?
I think in the second phase, that could happen. I think in this phase, it's pretty straightforward, so I don't foresee that being the case, but never say never.
Okay, thank you.
I liked the use of the word connecting to kind of help tie in the different areas that are right here in our central downtown. I say this every time Latham Plaza comes up, so you've heard this before. Are you clearing your throat at me? I'm just kidding. I'm concerned about the idea of a splash pad because of the requirement of fences and public bathrooms and the amount of maintenance that adds in terms of water testing, turning off, turning on, etc. I'm concerned about a traditional playground for the same reasons, safety, maintenance. Again, I sound like a broken record, I realize that I do, that we're already not, where's Ken Marsh? We're already not taking care of the things that we have in our downtown. So if we add a lot more equipment and things that rust and things that get vandalized, we're just adding more to that, and that's a big concern for me. This is we see how often that one surfer statue down there gets vandalized. So to me, the playground would be things kids can play on, but are not necessarily rustable metal. Maybe they're also public art, hint, hint. Statue types of things. I think there's a lot we can do down there that can entertain kids without adding a lot of maintenance to this effort. So I also, we use it a lot as event space. It's used for 45 days for Just Deck the Chairs, so I want to keep that into consideration too. I'm fine with not having a big grass hallway right through the middle of our downtown, but I want to make sure that we keep it a really functional space for all. And to me, that's not, I just think of like a rusty swing and like the metal slide that you used to have to go down when you're little and it was hot and it, I don't know why, these are just, or it's like broken and so it's a tetanus issue. And I know that's not how they do playgrounds anymore, but I do want us to think about that. It's downtown, it's highly probable that things will get messed with and get vandalized, and I want to make sure we're prepared to maintain that. So I'm going to say it again, I'll say it every time Latham Plaza redesign comes up. Mr. Jansen.
Well, just to echo your sentiments, Mayor, we do have a robust park system, and with Sunshine Park, we have all those needs kind of taken care of, and with the rebuild of Gonzales and urban trails, I think we're going to really address a lot of those concerns so they won't have to affect our redevelopment of our downtown. Not to say that there's not a place for it, but that's to be considered. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Horn.
I want to ask if there was a planned splash pad, any kind of water facility there, what would be the requirements in regards to, like we mentioned, surroundings, in regards to fencing? I'm assuming this would have to be fixed. And then again, I'm assuming you have height requirements, you'd have things that would limit people to getting in there. Then you're looking at something that would limit, the open spaces, is my thought.
Yes. And I know too, there'll have to be, there's a certain requirement with restroom facilities as well, and that has to be kind of fenced off to provide a protected area for, obviously, the splash pad's going to attract children. So there would be a lot of things that were not necessarily planned for initially. I think when the word splash pad is being thrown around, I think everyone sort of envisioned a natural play space with the splash pad, but unfortunately that's just not the reality. So I think that's something we have to take into consideration when we're finalizing these designs.
Thank you.
Mrs. Golding.
I just want to add for the benefit of the public that's here, the redesign of Latham Plaza, the reason this is being discussed is because we really like to activate that area throughout the days, you know, between events and get people to our downtown area, not just at night when the bars are open or when there's an event. So, you know, whatever we end up doing there, hopefully, that will be something that will attract people to come down there all times of the day.
Absolutely. And we also want to enhance the surrounding development and utilize what we're doing here to continue to attract the private investment surrounding Latham Plaza.
Any other questions from council? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Meza,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols.
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Okay, next item. Is anyone speaking on this, or is this me? Okay. We recently were made aware of some absences by 2 members of the Board of Adjustment that triggered the chair of the Board of Adjustment to send me a letter to notify me about these excessive absences. So subsequent to that, I spoke with each of the Board of Adjustment members individually, mostly because this was the first time that I've ever had anything like this, or that in 10 years that this has come about. So I wanted to speak with them before we brought this to council. Subsequently, Dan Amala went ahead and resigned. His living situation has changed. He has a house in North Carolina now, so he's spending a lot of time in both places, and realized that that was going to continue to hinder his ability to serve on this board regularly. Jeff Trular indicated that if possible he would like to stay on the board. He indicated there were some work travel conflicts that were impacting his ability to attend. So I guess the first thing we need to do is consider declaring the seat vacant by Jeff Trular, or we can consider it not vacant if we want to go ahead and leave him in his seat. It's up to us to determine if there was cause for him to be absent. And so his reasoning for being absent was work-related travel. So I think the other option is we could go ahead and declare his seat vacant, move the 2 alternates up. We could appoint Jeff to one of the alternate seats to take over a term there. So it's up to us to decide what we want to do. He's been on the board since 2014, and as we know, there's a lot of institutional knowledge that goes along with the Board of Adjustment, so we just have to decide how we want to handle that. So I guess we'll go ahead and have a motion, and then the council can discuss how we want to proceed. Mr. Nichols.
I move that we approve declaring the Board of Adjustment seat of member Jeff Trular vacant per section 3493D2 of the Code of Ordinances.
The motion doesn't have a second. Motion fails. Do we want to make an additional motion?
We could have voted that down, right? I was trying to.
We could have, but it needs a second to be considered.
Gotcha, so I can make another one.
Yep.
I move that we approve declaring the Board of Adjustment seat of member Jeff Trular not vacant per the section 3493D2 of the Code of Ordinances.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Golding.
I would just say that I would support keeping Mr. Trular in that seat based on my experience with the Board of Adjustment and his contributions. My only question would be, Mayor, did he say that he thought that he would be able to make more meetings going forward?
He indicated that the travel was somewhat cyclical in terms of he's been gone a lot recently due to travel with his business, but so he did feel like he could regularly attend meetings upon our conversation.
So anyway, I would support keeping him on the Board of Adjustment.
Mr. Jansen.
Yes, so I had the opportunity to work with him on the Board of Adjustments. He's very knowledgeable. He's got a lot of wisdom. He understands the code very well. And I thought he was a good asset. In fact, when it came to onboarding, I used his expertise to help me along. So as long as, to what my colleague said, as long as he can make the commitment to continue to serve, I would suggest that I would be in favor of keeping him on.
Mr. Nichols?
He does have a lot of knowledge, and I think he's a good fit for the board, but we last year talked more about attendance at these meetings, and currently they're not allowed to have more than 3 absences in the 6-month period, and work is taken away 9 times in the last 6 months. So, I think we just need to allow him to correct that action, but we also need to keep a watch on it, that if we get another 3 months and he's got more than 3, then we need to reconsider.
I agree with that. Mr. Mesa?
Corey took the words out of my mouth. I think I would approve of him staying on board, but in future, I think if he's going to be missing a lot of the meetings, that he should give us a heads up and think about either stepping down or giving us some time to find someone to replace him.
Thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, okay, so the next item would be to move Todd Smith, the first alternate, up to fill the remainder of Dan Amala's term on the Board of Adjustment. Just so you guys know, well, Greg, you probably already know, there's 2 alternates on this board, and it's for exactly this reason, so that we have kind of people on deck learning the role, or that can fill in when the regular member is absent. So we've been trying to kind of move people up from the alternate as we have the opportunity to. Mr. Nichols, can you give us a motion?
I move that we approve the appointment of Todd Smith to fill the remainder of the vacant regular meeting member term of Dan Amala on the Board of Adjustment expiring December 31st, 2025.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Golding.
I just wanted to share with my colleagues that I looked at Mr. Smith's attendance, and he has only missed 2 meetings in the entire time since he took this position in, I think in early February, and from what I've seen, he's done a very good job, so I support moving him up into that position.
That's great to hear. Any other comments or questions? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. So the next item would be that second. Okay, go ahead.
I move that we approve appointment of Jennifer Williams as the first alternate on the Board of Adjustments to fill the remainder of the term of Todd Smith's first alternate seat expiring December 31st, 2025.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Golding.
Yes, and follow up on this one as well. I looked into it, and Ms. Williams has missed 5 meetings in a 6-month period. So I do have some concerns about her attendance, but I'm willing to move her up into the first alternate position. But I do hope that maybe we can see her attendance improve, like what we're asking Mr. Trular to do.
She just got moved up into the hot seat, so maybe that will help. Any other questions or comments? I do want to say we just did interviews for the boards last week, and I think we're going to have 2 more people to interview before we do our appointments, which I think will be the second meeting in December. And I think we have a couple of good Board of Adjustment candidates there, so keep an eye out for that on your schedule. Hopefully as many council members can attend that as possible. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. The next item is regarding adopting the Urban Trails Master Plan. I think there was some discrepancies with the packet that was sent out to council, so we're going to defer that to a later meeting. So we will move right on to our ordinances. My new papers up here. Do we want to do staff report first?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Heather Ireland, Planning and Development Director. I believe there is a PowerPoint for this, Madam Clerk. Do you have that ready? Because I can scroll through that to assist with my presentation. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I will try to be brief. The rezoning application in front of you tonight is for property located at 201 Fifth Avenue North, which is the northwest corner of 2nd Street and 5th Avenue North. The property is the former location of the Beau's Coral Reef Bar, which was open in the location for around 55 years. It is the home of one of the city's 12 quota licenses, for 4 COP quota licenses. It closed in January of 2019, and since it's a non-conforming use that can't be reestablished after it had been abandoned for 6 months per the requirements of the Land Development Code, the applicant is now requesting to rezone it to try to fix some of those non-conformities of the property, such as parking and the fact that the property does not meet the proximity requirements from bar to bar as required by the Land Development Code. The new owner wants to establish a new drinking establishment, but add a retail and office component to the project as well. The building would remain on site, and again, they are requesting to rezone it to RD, which is redevelopment district, where how it is existing in the rest of the Land Development Code. They are also requesting relief from the 500-foot proximity rule, which is bar to bar, portal to portal, or main entrance to main entrance. And the applicant is proposing that parking be provided through a combination of on-site parking, off-site shared parking agreements, and a payment in lieu of program. Here's a picture of the proposed site plan that should be in your packet as part of the application. Again, just kind of breaking down the different uses that the applicant is proposing and showing the existing parking, which is over here along 2nd Street. As it exists currently, there's gravel parking spaces right there. So staff's analysis is that redevelopment of the property would eliminate a blighted property in our downtown area, provide a mix of commercial uses, and provides for reactivation of the site that's been vacant now for almost 4 years, from January 2019 when the previous drinking establishment closed. The use is not inconsistent with the previous commercial use on the site or surrounding properties, and we don't find that it's in conflict with the comprehensive plan or land development code. However, staff didn't necessarily recommend disapproval or approval. However, we did provide some conditions to consider for both the CRA, the Planning Commission, and for City Council should you decide to make a motion to approve it. And I'll go over those real quick and then cover what the CRA and the Planning Commission decided on this application. So the conditions that staff proposed, if this were to go forward as an approval, there are 6 of them. The first one is that any drinking establishment would require conditional use approval as opposed to be permitted by right. The second one that we recommended was that there was a minimum square footage of the retail and office uses. We consider what they were proposing to be rather small to make it a viable use. So we proposed 500 square feet for each one of those ancillary uses, and that parking would have to be provided before a certificate of use being issued on any of the portions of the mixed-use building. The fourth condition that we proposed was that there's no internal access between uses, that they be entirely separate and have separate bathroom facilities, which is a requirement of the Florida Building Code, and that one paved ADA parking space would be provided on site, which they are showing on their site plan. And the final condition that staff proposed was the consideration of the removal of a rear deck that exists on the north side of the property to be able to provide some potentially additional parking to meet the parking requirement of the proposed development. The Community Redevelopment Agency reviewed this application in October, and they did find that they found it consistent with the downtown redevelopment plan as it would remove a blighted property and blighted conditions on the property. And they recommended approval of the rezoning request with all of the suggested staff conditions with the exception of number 6, which is the one to remove the deck and provide additional parking. But they added a proposed condition to remove the gravel parking and along 2nd Street and make that paved. And then finally, the Planning Commission also reviewed this application in October and recommended approval adopting the first 5 staff conditions, which I previously discussed, all of them except number 6. So I know the applicant is here to add any additional context to their application and answer any questions, and obviously I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Ireland. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, creating a redevelopment district, RD zoning district, supplementing the comprehensive zoning regulations and plan for the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, as provided under Chapter 34 of the Code of Ordinances of said city, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. This ordinance for the redevelopment district RD rezoning of our property is before this council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. Under the laws of the state of Florida, an application to amend the zoning regulations or map governing a property is handled as a quasi-judicial proceeding. A quasi-judicial proceeding means that a governing body is now functioning in a manner similar to a court, with the mayor and council sitting as impartial decision makers, hearing testimony and questioning presenters who are to provide substantial and competent evidence to support their side of the issue. It is the duty of the council to arrive at sound decisions regarding the use of the property within the city. This includes receiving citizen input regarding the proposed use on the neighborhood, especially where the input is fact-based and not a simple expression of opinion. It is the applicant's burden to demonstrate that his or her application is consistent with the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. If the applicant is successful in showing consistency, then it is up to the local government to produce competent, substantial evidence of record that the application should be denied. The council's decision on an RD rezoning application is based on the criteria set forth in section 34-347C3I of the Land Development Code. Each member of the council has been provided a copy of this criteria. In addition, the council has received a copy of the application and staff, planning commission, and community redevelopment agency recommendations on this rezoning request. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2022-8186. Is the applicant or spokesperson for the applicant present, and would you like to make a presentation of your proposal? Come on up, and if you can say your name and address, you can address the council.
My name is Scott McAllister, and I live at 1941 Beach Avenue in Beach, Florida. I sent some emails kind of outlining, what had taken place, because it's been a long journey of trying to do something in advance to help put the whole picture together. I also brought these, Bill, I couldn't find your email address, I'm sorry. Sure, Sandy, please, thank you. So I have these.
Just hand them to the city clerk, she can distribute them.
So first, I'd like to thank Heather and Christian. It's been a long journey, they've been tremendous support. Very kind, great people. So to start off, on the front page of the packets is another location that we remodeled. We took a old 1927 service station and turned it into a restaurant location in Riverside. targeted different areas to try to bring back to life in different sectors of Jacksonville. This building caught our eye. We were excited about Jacksonville Beach and all the things that are happening in the area. So I purchased the building in 2019 with the liquor license in efforts to go in, do a cosmetic renovation. There was already an existing kitchen in there, and we would kind of be off to the races. So we engaged our architect and got the plans put together, submitted them to the city. There's a few corrections back and forth made. We made those corrections and were approved. We started doing our cosmetic renovations. The first inspection went great, and then it was all supposed to be 60 days in start to finish from when we had the approved active permit to when the doors would be open. And somewhere along week 6, Public Works stopped by and said, they walked around and said, well, I think you need dumpster corral. I said, well, we've been through the approval plans process, and they set the bar, they made a plan that shows what we needed to do. And so I really was not expecting the dumpster corral to need to be put in place. And he said, well, I'm not going to let you open unless you do so. So I called my architect and said, let's stay in line with what the city would like to see, and let's move forward and have these plans put together and try to overcome this. So we did so, submitted the plans, went back and forth, and start to finish, it took about 7 months to draw the plans, get approved, and build the dumpster corral. So we were thankful we were through that process, and then we went and did a couple more inspections and had multiple visits from the fire marshal. It was 5 visits in total, each time requesting more. And he said, please let this be the last one, we need to get open. This is important. And the 5, so they said, okay, this is it. This is the last list of requests. And the head of the building department came in as well. They said, I want to see these stains, change an electric panel, add some AC ducting, do a couple things that need to be done to be able to reopen. So we did so, and we're moving forward, and our open date was supposed to be March 2020. So our timing was not favorable, and the COVID pandemic hit at that point. I had to shut down all my other locations and lay off the whole company, about 100 people, and help them get taken care of where they need to go. I impacted a lot of people in a very short amount of time. So through that time frame, it was kind of another 1.5 years of regulations with the COVID, open closes, restrictions, and rehiring, and trying to navigate the whole process of where we were at. During that time, around May, 3 months into the pandemic, I had found myself in the hospital, and my body was it was shutting down on me, and they said they thought I had multiple sclerosis. So it's a really long journey, but ended up in the Mayo Clinic for back and forth for 1.5 years, and lost half my vision, and my body kept getting worse and worse. I found out that I had hidden bacterial infection. I thought I had an autoimmune disease attacking my central nervous system, but my liver started to go. So they found out, they put me on an antibiotic program, which was, thank God, it broke through, got me back on my feet. That whole process was about 1.5 years long. So through that, trying to kind of get the places reopened through COVID and make sure our permitting situation was intact. I thought we were. I spoke extended. By the time I found out that the building permit had not been extended, it was a few days past the COVID deadline. So I went downtown and said, is there a way you could give us an extension of a few days to be able to have this permit extended? And they said that they searched and said that they could not find a way to extend this permit. So the next step was to move forward with kind of restarting the whole process again, which at this point, it was in my spirit to keep pushing forward. It's been a long road, and for a lot of different reasons, this is not, for me, on a lot of levels, I need to keep moving forward. And so through this project, it's been tremendous carry cost. We've taken out 2 disaster relief loans to continue striving forward to reach the finish line, which is the goal. And the desire to support. It's important for me to open it, and I'd like to be able to do something nice for Jacksonville Beach and for a place where people can eat and drink, and we've finished the revitalization of this corner and the structure. And I'm here to address any concerns that you may have, or go into further detail of what's occurred and where we're at now.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and continue the hearing, and we'll give you any questions when they come up.
Thank you.
Thank you. First, we'll have speakers that are in favor of the application, starting with Mr. Don Hodges. If you want to come up to the podium, give your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hey, good evening. Don Hodges, 411 12th Avenue South, Jacksonville Beach. Been a paramedic for 16 years, worked for University of Florida, Trauma 1. I'm now a medical sales rep and also a small business owner here in Jacks Beach. I run a mobile coffee bar. Scott's been instrumental in helping me get that business up and running. He's a good man, he's loyal, he answers the phone, he answers all of our questions, helps us with the tax codes. He's just a really good man. I think he's going to do a really, really good job revitalizing that corner. If you've seen any of his other establishments and what he's been able to do, I think you're going to be very, very pleased. And so I'm here to give my support to him.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Mr. Linton, Brian Linton.
Thank you today. I appreciate everything y'all have done. It's really good to see like a government that still prays and salutes the flag and everything like that. I've never been in one of these, so it's kind of interesting. Anyway, my name's Brian Linton. I'm at 1201 Big Tree, Neptune Beach. I've been here for over 25 years. I am a small business owner, and I am here to speak on behalf of Scotty, and I think that if any of you would take the time to get to know him personally, there's one thing you'll miss if you do try to get to know Scotty, and that's he's so much a better listener than he, is a speaker. And I don't mean that as a slight to him. I mean it as when you talk to him, he really will listen. And so, when you have concerns as a community in an establishment like this, it's good to have somebody that's not going to get up here and just railroad everybody and talk all the time. He's interested in listening and doing something positive in the community. And I think you'll be satisfied with what he can do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linton. Ryan Love.
Good evening, City Council members. Ryan Lowe, 1417 4th Street North. I'm here to speak in support of Scott McAllister and voice approval for Ordinance 2022-8186. I've had the pleasure of knowing Scott personally and professionally for the past 15 years. Scott lives by core values of integrity and perseverance. His discipline and remaining true to those values has brought him through economic recessions, the recent pandemic, personal hardships, and to this opportunity with us today. As a Jacksonville Beach resident, taxpayer, and business owner, I believe Scott is the type of business partner our city should strongly consider. He has a proven track record of commitment and, most importantly, competence in restaurant management, design, and redevelopment. His concept will be an excellent fit with adjacent developments, residences, and businesses, and I'm excited to witness his contribution to our vibrant beachfront community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Joe Vieira.
Good evening, Council. I do want to congratulate you guys on an excellent event. The surf competition, numerous people kept raving about the impact here and how wonderful it is just to be able to bike something local and have a good time. And that's in part why I'm kind of here to support my buddy Scotty. My name is Joe Vieira. I've been a Beaches resident here for the past 20 years. Currently, I reside at 395 Skate Road in Atlantic Beach. And before my resignation in May of this year, I had the privilege of serving as pastor of the Beaches Vineyard Church in Atlantic Beach for 17 years. It is within this time as a local community member and leader that I had the opportunity to witness firsthand the high level of character, integrity, and community commitment that Scott McAllister lives out in both his personal and professional life. One such example was our partnership in helping Rethreaded find a permanent location. It was brought to my attention that Rethreaded was currently on the hunt for a property that they could invest in and grow. And the first person I thought to call was Scott McAllister. Once I called him, he immediately met with him, and they began to make it happen. And because of his efforts, they now have a permanent location. Over the years, both my family and friends have also had wonderful experiences enjoying Scott's restaurants and witnessing the life they have brought to their own local community. In fact, my only criticism or complaint to Scotty over the years has been that his restaurants are too far away for us local beach people, and that he needs to bring something closer. I was overjoyed when I found out that this might be a possibility with the location being proposed here today. I frequent Delicombe. It was one of my kind of out-of-office places, and I'm just going to be honest with you, sitting on the patio there meeting with people, I cannot tell you the amount of homeless individuals that I saw participate in urinating or using that area kind of in an unflattering manner. So in closing, I would just like to say that all my years serving in our local beaches community, I do not know and could not recommend a better business owner to partner with than Scott McAllister. With Scott, you can be sure that the well-being of our local community will never be lost. It will only be enhanced.
Thank you, Mr. Vieira. Dennis Morgan.
Good to see you. Hello. Nice to appreciate being here. I feel privileged to be here. My number 2 son was supposed to be here. His name's Tony Morgan. Incidentally, Dennis W. Morgan lived on 405 Sanibel Court in Neptune Beach. And 5 sons, 11 grandkids. Been married 45 years. I walk every morning 2 or 3 hours, or excuse me, 2 or 3 miles with my wife in the morning. And we fight like cats and dogs about every morning. And raising my sons, they battle all through their lives. They're owners of Crystal Clean, and they hired me 12 years ago to be a professional father. And it's great. This is great. All it costs you is your life and applying every lesson that you've had as a 73-year-old guy here. And Tony called me up and said, "Pop, I want you to come and weigh in for Scotty." I said, "Well, what's going on?" They gave me a little bit of the history of it. I said, "You gotta be kidding. Years? You just taken years to do what?" I understand. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I wanted to talk to you about, there's a common denominator. Each and every person that's come up behind this mic there's an extensive personal relationship I have with each one. You take Ryan, his dad and I have been partners, business partners for 35 years. Not to get into a long, drawn, dramatic story, but I kicked my kid out of the house when he was like 20. The oldest boy came here in 2001. And then number 2 son left. Number 3 son left. Number 4 son left. Number 5 son left. And finally the old man and his wife, we raised the flag, we surrendered. And we leave Missouri, a 250-acre farm, and come here. But what did I learn when I came here? I learned about this fierce capacity of my sons to have friends for life, customers for life, neighbors for life. And though they fight and go through all the stuff they go through, you're not going to meet finer boys. And what they have in common is that no matter who they are friends with, they're just like them. They don't know how to quit. The most painful thing I've listened to is you use the word me and my and I, because all this young man knows how to do is be fiercely committed to what's in your best interest, whether you're sitting across the bar, going to do business, next door neighbor, and so forth. I've witnessed this for 12 years. This is an extraordinary young man. And every person that's come behind this podium is somebody you need to get their contact information and follow them home. You're incredible.
Mr. Morgan, your time is out.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that explains your email address, papa@crystalclean. Tom Ryan.
Hello, Mayor, City Council members. Thank you for having me. I'm actually, my address is 6247 Ortega Farms Boulevard, Jacksonville, Florida, 32244. So I traveled 45 minutes to get here when I found out my friend Scott was going to be present, and just wanted to echo what everyone has said. He is one of the finest men I've met. I think I've known him for 15 years. He is a joy to be around. I agree with everyone who said he's a fantastic listener. He has a following. So I am from the west side of Jacksonville, and I've watched what he's done in Riverside and other places. And I think you will be very proud if you let this project go forward. I hope he doesn't spend too much time at the beach, because we'll miss him on that side of town. But he develops a following. He develops a group of people that truly love him, as you can hear from all of us. And it's just a joy. He's a joy to be around. So I would humbly ask that you approve this. And I think you will be very proud later that you did. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Alan Ing.
City Council. So, kind of surprised you got my name correct, so thank you. So, my name's Alan Ing. I am a vice president with a brokerage firm, national brokerage firm. So, but more importantly, I'm here tonight to basically discuss Scott McAllister. So, I've known him since we were at UNF, starting in 1999. So, we're not new to this area. We've been friends throughout. I'm actually kind of surprised at how in-depth he had to get with his private life. It's because of his health. I've known about these things, but I guess it's a good way to paint a picture. But it really boils down to this. There's no shortage of success. He's already demonstrated out west, West Bean, Riverside area. He brings basically a vibrancy to the community. So the projects that he's done, I'm pretty excited to see them actually take hold and become basically what they usually become, which are successes. The concepts really show that he's in tune with what's going on. They're not dated.
Mr. Ing, can you just state your address for the record,
Oh,
please?
yes, sorry. 12796 Chestnut Creek Drive, North, Jackson.
Thank you. That's the last of the speaker cards. Would anyone else like to speak in support of this application that maybe didn't have a chance to put a speaker card? Okay, we have one card in opposition, Mr. Ken Marsh.
Ken Marsh, 2011 Yale Avenue. I'm here tonight because I oppose this rezoning ordinance. I cannot say too much more than what I wrote in Beach's leader and in the letters that I sent to you last week. It's nice to hear about this gentleman being a good person, good listener, good businessman, and horrible to hear what he had to go through in COVID. Unfortunately, that has no relevance here tonight. This decision you make tonight is simply whether it has consistency with the comp plan and the LDC. Just similar to Adventure Landing the other few weeks ago. But I want to remind this body that the comp plan and the LDC fall far short of being rigid and exacting. To quote Supreme Court Scalia in his readings of legal text, and I quote, "First, the purpose must be derived from the text. LU1, the foundation and first goal of our comp plan, says, and I quote, does it provide for a continued high quality of life in Jack's Beach? What does that mean to you? If you've heard anything from the people in the workshops and the public meetings, we have said we have got enough bars. We need restaurants, we need shops. You know that's what we need. To the people, that's how they see it as quality of life. But what does it mean for you? The public hearing is not just consistency with the comp plan and LDC, it's how this body will interpret that principle and the principles contained within. So should I hear any approvals tonight, my expectation is for council members to justify how this adds how it's consistent with LU1 and adds quality of life for the citizens. And even more importantly, how does it add quality of life to our citizens who are downtown police officers? Is this going to add quality of life to them? Is this going to make their job any easier? It's a 5,700 square foot drinking establishment. If we wanted to call it a restaurant, let's call it a restaurant, but let's understand what that is. So I'm asking you tonight, don't allow this application to be a way to get around the code where bars can't be within 500 feet of one another, and we call this a shopping center because it's got 1,000 square feet of retail/office. Don't add to the downtown problems. Don't add to the burden of our police officers. Be consistent in supporting the citizens and the public desire to have a family and resident-friendly downtown. Thank you.
You're really nailing that 3-minute timeline.
This does help.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Would anyone else like to speak in opposition to the application? City Attorney or Director of Planning Development, do you wish to respond to any of the comments made by the applicant or the public? Thank you. Mr. McAllister, would you like to respond to any of the testimony by the staff or the public? You can say no, it's okay. And the public hearing is closed. Before requesting a motion on this ordinance, beginning with myself, each of the members is requested to indicate for the record both the names of persons and the substance of any ex parte communications regarding this application. An ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or citizen who may have an interest in this decision which occurred outside of the public hearing process. I received the email that Mr. McAllister referenced in his comments that I think was probably sent to the full council that I will forward to the clerk. We'll start down at this end. Mr. Sutton?
Email from Mr. Marsh, and obviously we heard this last month on the, and I'll comment further shortly, but on the Planning Commission, and emails from Mr. McAllister as well. I think that's it.
Mr. Horn?
I received the same email that was sent to the rest of the council members from Mr. Marsh. That's the only one.
Mr. Mason?
I received an email from Mr. Scott a couple days ago, I think it was, and then just Ken Marsh, that's it.
Mr. Nichols?
I received the email from Mr. McAllister. I forwarded it to the city clerk.
I also received the email from Mr. McAllister. It'll be forwarded to the city clerk.
I received the email from Mr. McAllister and emails from several residents, including Mr. Marsh, Mr. Ricketts, who lives at the Pier Point, and there's another gentleman, I apologize, I don't have his name, but I'll forward his email to the city clerk.
Thank you. Can we have a motion, please?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2022-8186 on the first reading for a redevelopment district RD zoning district rezoning for 201 5th Avenue North and schedule a second reading for December 5th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions from council. Mr. Horn.
Just a question, what is the actual capacity of this facility projected? For the applicant.
No, I can't remember what the fire marshal had put. I think it was, don't quote me on it, but around 180 or so.
And is it bar only, restaurant and bar?
There's a restaurant component, we'll have food. The license, we have one of the 12 Jacksonville Beach licenses that we purchased with the business. So under that, for COP quota, through meetings with Heather and the zoning department, we had to have that zoning specification for the license.
Thank you.
Mr. Jansen.
Ms. Harlan, if you bring up the screen that had the 5 recommendations.
All
Six.
6. Yeah, so these were the ones that staff proposed to the CRA and the planning commission. So this is the 6 of them in their entirety. And there were some changes by the time we got through the planning commission. So again, is there any questions? Specific ones to these?
Was the minimum square footage for the office retail, was that changed?
Sort of. So staff is suggested to the planning commission to consider 500 for each as opposed to the 200 and 250. And what the planning commission did after discussion with the applicant was to basically change that recommended condition to present to the council of 1,000 square feet of aggregate square footage. So one could be 300, one could be 700, for example, but not limit them to the 500 apiece, but still maintain that 1,000 total. So that's where we ended up with these final recommendations from the planning commission.
Okay. I guess some of my concerns are like the office space being only 250 square feet. That's about the size of a closet. In retrospect, if it's going to be mixed use, I'd like it to be true mixed use. You know, where you have a substantial retail space and a substantial office space that could be used. Additionally, the parking spaces, all the recommendations, quite frankly, all the recommendations that you had from staff, I think are very important. The paved parking, the additional parking in lieu of maybe a deck redesign. I'm not saying it should be eliminated altogether, but maybe a redesign where you can incorporate some more parking spaces, especially when you have a business that size and with that capacity. I think the parking requirements have to be met in the spirit of what we're trying to do in our downtown area, in the central business district, to redevelop it and make it useful for everyone. I think those are important points that you have brought out.
I went back and remeasured for the office and the retail. The configuration of the building is sort of challenging with load-bearing walls and whatnot, but it actually was very close. I think we came up with how we could split one at 467 square feet. The other one would be a little bit more at about 550 square feet. We could achieve that goal before in the planning commission placement of where the dumpster corral that Public Works has built, that way before all this, and it would not allow egress or going into the right of way is not functional. Even if it was the whole deck would be taken out, we would have to demolish the dumpster corral and move it somewhere else. But that was a very expensive build and created a lot of issues to start with. So it's a problematic layout on the corner. On the deck side, you know, Heather and I spoke about it, and being on the beach and having an outside component for people to have, you know, a bite and a drink is sort of a critical component to being able to make sure we hit revenue numbers to pay our overhead.
Just want to add on that really quick. I think tearing out outdoor space to put in a surface lot would be contrary to everything we've talked about in our downtown area. This building?
Ms. Ireland, you mentioned in your report that this is currently a non-conforming use.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So the previous drinking establishment predated the code that we have now by quite a lot. So it never received conditional use approval because it existed before that process existed. The code has a provision that if a non-conforming use, which bars are allowed in the downtown with conditional use approval, but there's a provision in the code if a non-conforming use or structure becomes basically abandoned for 6 months, and in this case, the expiration of any building permits essentially caused this particular property to become abandoned, then they can no longer continue without coming into compliance with all the codes. So that's zoning code, life safety, and building code. So they're a non-conforming use for the mere fact that they've existed prior to our code in its current format.
Okay, and we've heard speakers tonight mention Mr. McAllister's success with restaurants and other locations. Is a restaurant permitted on this property without having to do any rezoning?
So yes, a restaurant is a permitted use in CBD zoning. What would be non-conforming about the site in relation to a restaurant would be their parking. So they would still have to find some way, not around the parking requirement, but add additional spaces on site, do a shared parking agreement with a neighboring property owner, or do payment in lieu of. So a standalone restaurant at this size would require, because the code is the same as the rest of the city, around 65 parking spaces, which is impossible to do on the property as it's configured now.
Okay. Some other things I wanted to bring up. Let's see. In Mr. McAllister's, this is for the benefit of my colleagues, in Mr. McAllister's email, he mentioned something about City of Jacksonville automatically extending the permit, or permits, I guess. It's my understanding that our state law doesn't require that the permits be automatically extended. Is that correct?
Well, during COVID, the way the executive orders from the governor were written, those essentially automatically extended everything. It was a case-by-case basis, depending when the permit was submitted and what stage in the process it was in. It was that final extension where there was a deadline now set for this is the last one. You've got to do the applicant has to take action within a certain amount of time. This is the last extension. So that, I'm not sure that Jacksonville would have been able to automatically extend that, since that was coming down to us from the state of Florida. So the previous ones, yes, but that final one, I would say no.
So I looked up the state statute for tolling and extension of permits and other authorizations, and it indicates, and that's 252.363. Does that sound correct to you? It says within 90 days after the termination of the emergency declaration, the holder of the permit or authorization shall notify the issuing authority of the intent to exercise the tolling and extension granted under paragraph A. And the notice must be in writing and identify the specific permit. So typically, is that what other people who had permits that were outstanding did?
Yes, ma'am. We had all varieties of permit status. So we had some people that they expired, they maybe came back in and renewed that permit because they were able to. Folks that completed the work during that time period. We did have a few that expired. You know, this is a unique situation since it was a non-conforming use. I don't know that we ran into it on any other property, but we had all varieties of where those permits stood during that COVID time period.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the 500-foot exemption, to me, waiving that 500-foot exemption makes this not consistent with our land development code, because that is a requirement of our land development code, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I also just want to state that, to me, providing a mix of commercial uses, the sizes of what's proposed here are very disappointing. To me, it's not really a very, it's not very large spaces at all, which to me goes against really what's behind the shopping center, or what's the purpose of a shopping center, is to provide multiple mixes of use. So I do have concerns about that. Another thing I wanted to point out is that the application mentions that there might be rooftop service, and based on the feedback that I've received from citizens who live right there adjacent to that property at the Pier Point condominium, I have significant concerns about any consideration of rooftop service near those residents. And I would just say, personally, I just can't support this application that's exempting the 500-foot requirement. I would love to have a restaurant there. I think a restaurant, it would be, if Mr. McAllister did what he's done in some of his other locations, it could definitely revitalize that property, which has been mentioned to be blighted, but I'd like to point out that that blight is because it hasn't been cared for, which is very disappointing, because we do have some properties throughout the city like that. And I would like to see our property owners take better care of their properties so that we don't have this issue of claims that it's blighted and that something else is going to make it better, because I mean, we live here and we don't want to see these blighted conditions. We would appreciate it if our property owners would take care of properties. So I'm just going to say that at this point, I can't support this application for the RD rezoning, in particular because of the 500-foot exemption. I appreciate the challenges that the applicant has had, but as Mr. Marsh said, this is it's our responsibility to basically make a decision with regard to our code and what our code says and what would be in the best interest of our community. And I don't believe another bar in the downtown area is appropriate. It's, as Mr. Marsh said, it's something we've been hearing for many years now, that's an issue, and it definitely is an issue for our police department. I would support a restaurant in that location, but I can't support another bar.
Thank you, Ms. Golding. Mr. Mesa.
My concerns with this is same as Sandy's, with the proximity of the bar, and I lost my place. From conditional to permitted use. It's unfortunate what happened to that location, and I know with the non-conforming use, everything has lapsed. I would like to, and the other thing too is my concern is the square footage of the retail and office space. the 250 and 200, I think that's not a lot of retail space. The 1,000 square feet, I wish it was a little bit more. But I also want to continue, I want Mr. Miller to work with us as well. We want to work with you. We don't want to see this building sit empty, but we also have to meet the needs of the quality of life. I've been to the places that you have, and they're phenomenal. I like going to them, and I know neighbors sometimes complain, but you know, that's what happens when you move right next to a location like that. I can't fully support it 100%. I want to see something that I'm able to approve, and what I just mentioned, I just can't fully support it.
Mr. Sutton?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think we sort of, we had some good discussions, struggled with this on the Planning Commission, even though it passed. And I think, Heather, you outlined the 500-foot thing obviously predated any of the code, and that was sort of grandfathered. And so we're faced with that. Obviously, under the LDC today, it is not consistent. I believe the retail and the office, those each have to have independent restrooms, is that correct? That would be.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, to clarify, and I confirmed this with the building official, that because they're different occupancy types, they have to be totally separated, that they're separate egress and ADA access and bathroom facilities, which was one of the reasons why staff proposed the condition, if it were to go forward with approval, that those spaces be enlarged to accommodate all of those requirements.
And that was some of the discussion we had on Planning Commission of having those spaces be even larger, because 250 is nothing. So I would agree with some of the previous comments that I think 1,000, some combination to equal 1,000 is bare minimum. And then the parking, Heather, that would have to be, if it were off-site agreement, that would have to be filed with the city prior to any, whatever contract they were, if they were to come up, if this were to be approved, that would have to be filed previous.
Yes, sir. We would apply the standards of the code as it relates to shared parking agreements, which it has to be within a certain distance away and meet other requirements such as different hours of operation, et cetera.
Okay. So obviously, Mr. McAllister's been through a trial here for sure with his health and everything else. I think that's, you know, I'm sympathetic with that, but we've got a, you know, this is a tough one. We've got a decision before us here where we have the opportunity to bring that property into compliance with the code today, and he's sort of caught in a pickle here. So, you know, just consideration of everybody. We were sort of torn with it on the Planning Commission, and I can tell everybody probably is here as well. So.
Ms. Golding?
I apologize for the revisit, but there was one other thing, and this is in kind of in follow-up to what Mr. Sutton just said. I looked at our code, and with regard to nonconformities, our code says, within the provisions established by the LDC, there exist uses of land, structures, and lots that were lawfully established before the LDC was adopted or amended that now do not conform to the terms and requirements of the LDC. The purpose and intent of this article is to regulate and limit the continued existence of those uses that do not conform to the provisions of the LDC. It is the intent of the LDC to permit these nonconformities to continue until they are removed, but not to encourage their survival except under the limited circumstances established in this article. And to me, I just feel that that's very compelling, that it's our responsibility to get this property into compliance and no longer be a non-conforming property.
I hear you on that, but I think one of the, and this is something that's been a concern of mine for a long time, is not just limiting the continued existence of the uses, but to limit the continued existence of the physical building in order to bring it make it something that can conform, and I think we're gonna lose, we're already losing some of our older buildings, and I'm not gonna say that this one is particularly architecturally significant, but we have already lost many buildings because of this, so I think that that's something we need to consider. This is, to echo Mr. Sutton's comments, this is a tough one. It was so close so many times. I mean, 50 feet is just not that much. In a couple days on renewing the permit, it's just a little miss, but this is a really hard one to consider. I just wanted to ask Mr. McAllister, why not a restaurant? And can you address that a little bit about why you wouldn't just put a restaurant on this location? I know you're planning to serve food, but can you just go through that with us?
Sure. So the liquor license itself is a quota license. It's one of the 12 that's in the Jacksonville Beach area. And to place that license, it's not that 5149 sort of over serving more food and drinks. But we will have a restaurant license. It's each county sort of has a different viewpoint on what a restaurant is. If you go down to St. Augustine, what we're doing here, they label it as a restaurant. If you go to Jacksonville and Duval, what we're doing here is that they label it as we would need a bar tavern zoning qualification. So when we sat down, Feather and Christian, it came out that with this license we needed, the more of a bar tavern type qualification, since we won't be, since we have the license, we have to put it somewhere because it'll lose this sort of Jacksonville Beach parameter. And at the same time, we may or may not won't be hitting the 51%. So that's kind of, did I clarify that correctly?
Yeah, so the quota license has to stay in Jacksonville Beach. So even if you weren't able to use it in this location, it's going to show up at some other location in Jacksonville Beach.
So it kind of, all of this triggered issues with the beverage department as well. I had to spend a lot of time getting an extension to have an escrow, so we have the extension to place the license, but to actually realistically find another location, get that location prepared, be able to put the license in that location within the time clock that's there is unrealistic.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Mr. Mason?
Ms. Heather, on the conditional uses, on the recommendations, are we able to add where, with the noise ordinance, I know they have a deck patio, if we would continue to work on it, we put it where it's not allowed after 10 p.m. since it's right next to Pure Point and
Sure, yeah, I don't see why not. So again, staff recommended that if it were to move forward with approval, that the use of a bar would be conditional as opposed to permitted as it is in the rest of the city. So as Mr. McAllister mentioned, if they were to have to find another location, it would have to go through the planning commission to get approval as well. One of the things that you have at your discretion is to impose conditions. So limits on the outdoor deck, hours of operation, certainly could be one of those things.
that's another concern that I have. I know I don't want to see it lighted anymore, but I also want to respect the comments residents have emailed us on, and I just want to work with Mr. Miller.
Sure, and staff had the same concerns about noise issues or complaints, which led to our final or sixth recommendation to remove the outdoor deck entirely, since it is a drinking establishment that can serve food if they want to, but they wouldn't be required to serve food at all. They could provide it and get rid of it at any point in time and not be in violation of their state liquor license. So that was part of our recommendation for that, was to try to mitigate that to some extent.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? At this point, we have not amended to adopt the planning commission recommendations. Is anybody interested in doing that?
Keep in mind that on the deck discussion, I know that had the sound had come up in conversation a few times when Heather and I were speaking about what concerns we have for, Pier Point and the neighbors in the surrounding area. And we had kind of done a little research, and the 55 years that they were there, they never actually received a noise complaint. I think because it's how the deck's sort of strategically placed in between the commercial building, which is our structure, then the strip center behind it, in front of it, and to the left of it, it's sort of consolidated. But I also kind of called, a couple people to research deeper on where the concerns were coming from, and there was some mention that that when Bose was operating out of there was some parties that really had DJs out there, and it was significantly loud. So even if there was not any noise complaints, I do know that was occurring at that time, which is, I could absolutely see where there's sort of, probably specifically Pier Point, because they're closest to proximity to that location. That's outside entertainment is not, for that reason, is not an approach we were going to take. In another location that we've had, it's hard to get entertainers to be considerate. They're there for one night, and you tell them 5 times to turn it down, and you walk away, and they turn it back up. So in that location, we just said, I talked with management, I said, no more outside entertainment. It's too much of a disruption. And I think in a scenario like this, I don't think it's unreasonable to go at that approach, and if you feel like having a requirement that would suggest or say specifically, outside entertainment or outside entertainment that stops at 10 p.m. If we were going to have an acoustic guy on the weekends or something along those lines, I think it's a reasonable evaluation.
Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
A yes vote is to,
A yes is to support the application as presented.
Councilmember Horn,
No.
Councilmember Jansen,
No.
Councilmember Meza,
No.
Councilmember Nichols,
No.
Councilmember Sutton,
No.
Councilmember Golding,
No.
Mayor Hoffman.
No, I'm sorry, motion fails. Next item.
I guess since this is the first time, I had wanted a deferral if it was going to be a no. I didn't realize that the vote was going to happen right then. Is this a possibility to maybe have 30 days to kind of reevaluate?
I don't think you can at this point since we took the vote on it, but I would just regroup with Ms. Ireland in the planning department.
You can do a motion to reconsider the vote. Anyone who votes with the prevailing side of the vote can bring it back on a motion to reconsider. So you just do the same motion again.
Would it have to be done at this meeting or could it be done at a future meeting?
Because we don't have any rules that specify the timing of this, it would have to be on this particular meeting. And that's under Robert's rules. Our rules are, if we don't have anything that states otherwise, we have to default back to Robert's rules. So we don't have a provision that says motions to reconsider can be brought back at any time.
Okay, so if someone wants to make a motion to reconsider, it doesn't have to be, and we approve it, it doesn't have to be done at this meeting, it could be.
No, it would have to be before the end of this meeting.
The motion, okay, so the motion to reconsider, and then if we reconsider it, then he can ask for a deferral.
You would have to reconsider the same question. So the question becomes then, would you allow him to either ask for a deferral and someone before the vote is taken, move to defer the vote? So the motion to defer takes precedence over all the, basically the primary motions.
So we make a motion to reconsider when the motion, if we reconsider the motion while the motion is on the floor, someone moves to defer the motion to a date certain or indefinitely?
I wouldn't say indefinitely, because there's a certain time frame for these applications to be voted upon, and so a date certain would be preferable.
Maybe 30 days. 30 possible.
Well, let's see if there's a willingness on the council to reconsider the motion. Mr. Mesa?
Make a motion to consider?
To reconsider.
Reconsider?
Yes. So it's a two-part process. There's a vote on the motion to reconsider. If that passes, then you do the vote again on the primary motion before, and that's to approve ordinance 2022-81-86.
Let's just take this one step at a time. So Mr. Mesa has made a motion to reconsider. Is there a second? There is no second. Motion fails.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item, our final item for the night. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Ireland, would you like to give a staff report?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. It was a briefing a few months ago. The City Council asked staff to look at adding some language to the Land Development Code that would allow 8-foot solid fences in rear or side yards of residential property when they immediately back up to, I apologize, I'm holding it hostage, aren't I? There we go. I'll give it back, I promise. 8-foot solid fences on single-family residential property when they immediately are adjacent to a commercial or industrial use. So we've provided some language for you to that effect. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this for your action with a small clarification that staff incorporated into the language. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, to amend an ordinance enacting and establishing a comprehensive land development regulation and official zoning map for the incorporated area of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, as authorized by Chapter 163.3202 Florida statutes by amending Articles 8, Division 2, Supplemental Standards, to modify the fence height requirements, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to pre-record these going forward. This ordinance for the amendment of the Land Development Code is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading under the laws of the state of Florida, an ordinance which changes the actual list of permitted, conditional, or prohibited uses within a zoning category, or which otherwise changes the text of the Land Development Code, is a quasi-legislative proceeding. A quasi-legislative proceeding means that a governing body is acting in its rulemaking capacity. It is the duty of the council to arrive at sound decisions regarding the use of the property within the city. This includes receiving citizen input regarding the proposed uses within a zoning category. The application has been reviewed by staff and the Planning Commission for consistency with other portions of the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. The council may hear from all interested parties in the legislative determination of an amendment to the text of the Land Development Code. The council's decision on a text amendment application is based on the criteria set forth in section 34-211 of the Land Development Code. Each member of the council has been provided a copy of the criteria. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2022-8187. There's not really an applicant. We have a couple of speaker cards. To speak in, it doesn't say in favor, April Howard is our first speaker, I believe, in favor of this ordinance.
Hi, my name is April Howard. I live at 29 San Pablo Circle South, and I am speaking in support of ordinance 2022-8187. I think the council knows I am obviously in favor of amending the land development code to allow for a solid 8-foot fence against commercial property. I continue to deal with my unpleasant commercial neighbors on a daily basis. I want to thank Ms. Ireland for putting together the amendment, and then the council, of course, for putting it on the agenda. And I'm looking forward to a resolution at our at the next meeting in December. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Ms. Jones? Sherry?
No, I was just saying I.
Ditto? Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to speak in opposition? Would anyone else like to speak in for or in opposition to this application? This public hearing is closed. Before requesting a motion on this ordinance, beginning with myself, each of the members is requested to indicate for the record both the names of persons and the substance of any ex parte communications regarding this application. An ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or citizen who may have an interest in this decision which occurred outside of the public hearing process. I did receive, I believe, an email from Ms. Howard within the last couple of days. Mr. Sutton?
None.
Mr. Horn?
None. I received an email from Ms. Howard a couple days ago.
None.
I received an email from Ms. Howard.
I've received an email from Ms. Howard, and we've spoken in person several times in regard to this issue and in support of the amendment.
Thank you. Before opening the floor for discussion or questions by the council, please be reminded that our decision will be based on the criteria set forth in the Land Development Code, staff's report, the recommendation of the Planning Commission, and public input at all hearings. May I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2022-8187 on the first reading for a text amendment to the Land Development Code for fence height and schedule a second reading for December 5th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Nichols.
I just want to say that I'm very glad that we've gotten to this point. I know, Ms. Howard, that this is a very frustrating process, and I appreciate you being diligent and your efforts to get this changed, and I hope this does end up resolving your challenges.
Ms. Golding.
Quick question for you, Heather. In the event that this were to pass tonight and December 5th, how soon could Ms. Howard get a permit to install a fence, an 8-foot fence?
I think this is on the agenda for December 5th. Is that right? So
Yes,
December
ma'am.
6th.
Okay, thank
Fence
you.
permits are usually typically very easy.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would just add, thank you for taking care of this issue. I know you've had a lot of things on your plate, and to add this to your queue, I appreciate it, and I know Ms. Howard does as well.
Mr. Sutton?
Thank you, Mayor. Heather, we had a discussion at the Planning Commission meeting about the property line, that this would really pertain to the property line that was abutting the commercial property. And I see where you've added, although we used the term immediately adjacent twice here, I think one's referring to commercial property immediately adjacent to some portion of your property, and the other one's talking about immediately adjacent. Are you referring to that property line at that point?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Question for Ms. Robinson as to whether you think that's clear enough that that's referring to that particular property line that abuts the commercial property. The concern was on the Planning Commission, and Heather, they have made an attempt here to clarify that, and I think it could be interpreted that way. The concern was that the way it was previously read, somebody may try to take advantage of that and put an 8-foot fence all the way around their side yard and backyard, and that was not the intent. The intent was for the 8-foot fence to be on the property line where the commercial use was. I'm not saying it's not, I'm just a question.
Well, I think the use of the word borders might have been a better word than adjacent to. I think your question is well founded because it would allow more fencing than you had originally intended with the consideration that was made for this particular provision. So if you want to make sure it's limited to just the side that borders the commercial use, I would say that it could be more clear and to substitute the word adjacent with borders.
Yes, staff would not object to that change if it said, not to exceed 8 feet on the property boundary that borders the commercial or industrial use. I would be fine with that.
Unless someone feels that wasn't the intent, but I'm fairly certain myself the intent was just on that property line.
Mr. Sutton, would you like to offer an amendment?
Yes. Amendment to read that the side and rear yard fences on single-family residential uses that are immediately adjacent to the established commercial or industrial use may be built to a height not to exceed 8 feet on the property boundary immediately bordering the commercial or industrial use, and may be constructed without 25% of the aggregate surface area being open, even when the property is separated by an intervening alley.
Second.
We have a motion to amend and 6 seconds. Any discussion on the amendment? Mr. Mesa, you're late for the main, okay. Madam Clerk, roll call for the amendment.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Mesa?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes. Okay, so we are back to the original motion as amended. Mr. Mesa.
I was just going to share the same sentiments as Mr. Corey Nichols. Ms. Howard, I'm glad we're finally doing this. Heather, thank you so much, obviously, for doing this, and hopefully we don't hear from this again when it comes to neighbors complaining about the adjacent commercial building.
I also want to say that I admire your tenacity on this issue, and it sounds to me like this is going to pass on its first reading as amended. I do hope that we continue to put some pressure on this property owner because it sounds like they're being less than responsible with their commercial property. So you shouldn't have to build an 8-foot fence, and I'm sorry that you had to fight tooth and nail for the ability to be able to do that. But you shouldn't have to, and I think that this is something we need to make sure that through our code enforcement, enforcing our codes, doing the things that we need to do to make sure that this business is operating properly in this building.
To your point, Mayor, I just wanted to add that I've been in communication with the property owner and the property manager. It's an interesting situation because that's a right-of-way back there, and I also spoke to all the neighbors that live behind there, and the portion of fence behind Mrs. Howard is the only portion of fence that the commercial property installed. All the others were installed by the residents who live a little further north of Ms. Howard. So they did, the property manager did get approval to replace the fence immediately behind her. And so he's been connected with Public Works because now they have to get a revocable right-of-way permit. But the city is working with them to make it easy for, hopefully, to get this done. So my hope is that they can get that part of their fence, which is actually in really bad shape, replaced. I was hoping that could be done before this was passed, and hopefully that would help with her issues. But at least they are headed that way, and I hope it happens soon.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Mesa?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes. Before we adjourn the meeting, Madam City Attorney just wanted to address a clarification.
Yes, members of council, I apologize that the consideration of Number 8, on ordinances, I indicated that the motion to reconsider had to be made at the same meeting. Pursuant to section 2-38 of the city code, we have adopted procedures for motions to reconsider that permit us to reconsider a question at the same or the next regular council meeting. I unfortunately limited you tonight with my opinion that forced a vote tonight. So you do have the next regular meeting to raise this issue again, should that be what you desire, and I apologize.
Thank you for that clarification.